starch. The internet is currently obsessed with this. They say 1 teaspoon of this raw white powder before bed will heal your gut overnight, fix your insulin resistance, and give you the deepest sleep of your life. That sounds ridiculous, like absolute snake oil. I mean, it's a raw potato starch, essentially eating a raw potato without the potato part. Who does that? But here's the thing. I've spent most of my career in research and development. And when you actually dig into the clinical literature on something called resistant starch type 2, things get a little interesting. So I decided to be your guinea pig. I took this magic powder every day for a week. I tracked my digestion, my sleep, my blood sugar to answer one simple question. Is this actually a lazy way to fix your gut? Or is this just more health nonsense? Hey everyone, my name is Marcus. I'm a research scientist. I'm the wellness watchdog, and you're watching Health Sense or Nonsense, where we take viral health claims and run them straight through real science, not vibes. I generally care about your well-being, and my goal here is that together we can improve our health using evidence-based decisions, not hype. Important note before we continue. This video is for educational purposes only and is not legal advice or medical advice. Always talk with your qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your diet, supplements, or treatment plan. Let's talk resistant starch. Resistant starch is having a moment right now. TikTok says it fixes your gut. Instagram says it improves your sleep. Some blogs basically imply it'll rebalance your hormones, clear your skin, and maybe solve problems you didn't even know you had. Whenever something sounds that good and that easy, my wellness watchdog instincts kick in because biology almost never works that way. So today we're asking a simple question. Is resistant starch the lazy way to fix your gut, or is that just nonsense? Here's the plain English version. Most starches are broken down into glucose in your small intestine and absorbed into your bloodstream. Resistant starch is different. It resists digestion and travels intact to the large intestine where your gut bacteria ferment it. Think of it like this. Regular starch feeds you. Resistant starch feeds your gut microbes. And unlike people on the internet, gut bacteria don't argue. They just respond to inputs. When those bacteria ferment resistant starch, they produce short acid fatty chains, especially butyrate. Butyrate isn't magic, but it's important. Colon cells like it. They use it as fuel. That's one reason researchers are interested in resistant starch. In studies, it appears to support normal colon physiology by increasing butyrate production in at least some people. Notice how careful that language is. Appears. In studies, some people. That wording matters because here's what resistant starch does not do. It does not instantly heal IBS. It does not detox your gut. It does not cancel out a highly processed diet, and it does not magically fix sleep problems on its own. Resistant starch is supportive, not corrective. If your gut health foundation is shaky, hydration, total fiber intake, sleep stress, resistant starch won't suddenly stabilize it. And this is where an important distinction almost never gets discussed in gut health content. The difference between deficiency and optimization. A lot of resistant starch hype quietly assumes that everyone is deficient in it. That's simply not true. Some people already get meaningful amounts through beans, lentils, whole grains, or cooled starches without realizing it. For those people, adding more resistant starch may not change much at all. And that's not because it isn't working, but because you weren't deficient in it in the first place. This is where optimization culture gets people into trouble. Optimization assumes that if a little is good, more must be better. Biology doesn't work that way. Especially in the gut. It feeds bacteria, and feeding bacteria is context dependent. The existing microbiome community, gut motility, stress levels, and baseline fiber intake all matter. That's why two people can take the exact same amount and have completely different outcomes. One person feels nothing. One person feels better. One person feels worse. None of those outcomes are surprising. This is also why I'm cautious about calling anything a gut fix. Fix implies something is broken. Often, what's really happening is that the system is adapting. If your gut responds with gas or bloating, that doesn't automatically mean damage. It means fermentation increased. The real question is whether symptoms settle over time or escalate. That distinction matters, and is why slow titration beats aggressive dosing almost every time in gut interventions. You're not trying to overwhelm the system, you're trying to signal it. Think of resistant starch less like medicine and more like information. You're giving your microbiome a new input and watching how it responds. That mindset alone tends to produce better decisions, less anxiety, and better long-term outcomes. Now, a lot of people don't actually search for resistant starch. They search things like, why can't I sleep? Why do I wake up exhausted? Or why am I bloated at night? Here is the honest science. Gut fermentation can influence metabolic health, and metabolic health in turn interacts with circadian rhythm, which affects sleep quality in many people. That's a plausible, indirect relationship, not a guaranteed sleep hack. And human data on resistant starch and sleep are still early. So if someone sleeps better after improving gut health, that's plausible. It's just not something you can promise. And in a minute, I'm going to explain the number one mistake people make with resistant starch. The reason so many people say, I tried it and it made everything worse. If that's your experience, you'll want to hear this. One thing I want to slow down and clarify here, because this is where nuance matters, is how resistant starch fits into gut health compared to other fibers. Not all fiber does the same thing. Some fibers are mostly bulking agents. Some are viscous and slow digestion. Some are rapidly fermented. Resistant starch sits in a unique category because it's fermented more slowly and tends to prefer increased butyrate production. That's useful, but more fermentation is not always better. Fermentation produces beneficial compounds, but it also produces gas. If someone already has visceral hypersensitivity, altered motility, or an imbalanced microbiome, adding a highly fermentable substrate can amplify symptoms before any benefit shows up. That's why some people say resistant starch was life-changing, and others say it was a disaster. Same intervention, different baseline. And this is an uncomfortable truth, but it's important. Gut health advice that works for everyone, it just doesn't exist. Human variability is real. Another area where resistant starch gets attention is insulin sensitivity. Several controlled trials show modest improvements in insulin sensitivity, particularly in people who are already insulin resistant. That's one reason it sometimes shows up in conversation about metabolic health and sleep. But again, the context matters. If someone is already metabolically healthy, the effect size is small. If someone is insulin resistant, the effect may be more noticeable, but it's still supportive, not curative. Resistant starch is not a substitute for sleep, movement, or overall diet quality. It's more like a nudge in the right direction. Here's another mistake I see constantly, treating resistant starch like a supplement instead of a food behavior. When people jump straight to powders, they bypass natural safety mechanisms, chewing and portion size. Whole foods slow you down. Powders don't. That's why many people tolerate food sources just fine, but struggle with supplements. It's not that supplements are inherently bad, it's that they remove friction. In gut health, friction is sometimes protective. Timing also matters more than people realize. Some people experiment with resistant starch at night, hoping it will improve sleep. For a subset of people, that's fine. For others, nighttime fermentation increases bloating and discomfort, which actually worsens sleep. There is no universal best time. If someone is sensitive, earlier in the day often works better. If someone tolerates it well, it may not matter at all. Now, there's one more piece of this conversation that almost never gets mentioned when people talk about gut health online. Your gut is not broken just because it reacts. A lot of wellness content treats symptoms like bloating, gas, or changes in stool as proof that something is wrong. In reality, those are signs that your gut is responding to input. Response does not automatically mean dysfunction. When resistant starch increases fermentation, that tells us microbes are active. The question isn't whether something happened, it's whether the response is tolerable, improving, and sustainable over time. In clinical research, interventions are judged on benefit and tolerability. If something technically improves a biomarker but makes daily life worse, that's not a win. And that matters because gut health trends often reward intensity instead of consistency. People jump from zero fiber to maximum fermentation, and they conclude their gut is fragile or broken. In many cases, just being overwhelmed. Another unappreciative factor here is stress. Stress can change gut motility, gut permeability, and even microbial composition. So if someone adds resistant starch during a high-stress period, the outcome may have very little to do with the starch itself. That's why I encourage people to view gut experiments as temporary probes, not permanent commitments. You're not marrying resistant starch. You're gathering information. And that framing alone reduces anxiety, which ironically improves outcomes all by itself. One of the most reliable predictors of success with gut interventions isn't the intervention, It's patience. Slow changes, small doses, and realistic expectations outperform aggressive protocols almost every time. That's not exciting advice, but it is honest. So here's a reframing that helps. Instead of asking, will resistant starch fix my gut? Ask, does resistant starch support the conditions my gut needs to function well? When framed that way, the evidence makes much more sense. If this breakdown is helpful and you appreciate evidence-based health content without hype, consider liking the video and subscribing to Health Sense or Nonsense. It really helps the channel and tells me to keep making content like this. Let's clear up a few myths. Resistant starch does not detox your gut. Your liver detoxes. Your gut ferments. Not everyone needs a supplement resistant starch. Many people get enough from food alone. And feeling worse does not mean it's working. Discomfort is feedback, not progress. For most people, food sources are the safest place to start. Cooked and cooled potatoes or rice, lentils and beans, oats, slightly green bananas. If you and your healthcare provider decide it makes sense to experiment, you can use a simple 7-day resistant starch trial. For days 1 through 3, add 1 small serving per day from food. No supplements, no stacking changes. For days 4 through 7, if you're tolerating it well, add a second small serving. If symptoms worsen, pull back. Track bloating, stool consistency, energy, and sleep quality. If nothing improves, stop. That's not failure, that's data. And that's why the lazy way is usually the smart way. Your gut microbiome prefers consistency over intensity, and it's less like a golden retriever and more like a cautious shelter dog. You earn trust slowly. Final reminder before we wrap up. This video is for educational purposes only and is not legal advice or medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before making health decisions. Your digestive system is resilient. Progress is usually subtle before it is obvious. I'm Marcus, your wellness watchdog. This is Health Sense or Nonsense. Thanks for watching. Wellness Watchdog